When your child constantly jumps from one activity to another, forgets simple instructions, or seems like they just can't slow down, do you actually know what's happening inside their developing brain? Most people think they're just energetic, maybe a little stubborn, maybe they simply need more discipline. But behind those frustrating daily moments, there's something much deeper that many parents don't recognize until years later. It's one of the most important developmental patterns to understand in early childhood. And if you dismiss these signs, or panic the moment you notice them, you might miss the opportunity to give your child the support they truly need during one of the brain's most flexible periods. So let's start with what these early signs of ADHD really mean. 1. The biggest myth. They're just being naughty. Have you ever wondered why your child can sit and build with blocks for an hour one day, but can't stay at the dinner table for 3 minutes the next? You probably thought they were simply refusing to listen. But here's what's actually happening. ADHD is not a problem of intelligence. It isn't even a problem of knowing what to do. It's a challenge involving the brain's executive functions, the mental systems responsible for attention, impulse control, planning, and working memory. Think of executive function as the brain's air traffic controller. Most children's brains gradually learn how to direct thoughts, emotions, and actions. For children with ADHD, that controller is still learning to manage an airport filled with planes arriving all at once. Think about that for a second. Your child often isn't choosing distraction. Their brain is struggling to organize information quickly enough. This changes everything about how you interpret their behavior. Instead of seeing defiance, you begin seeing a developing brain asking for support. And by the way, if your child becomes intensely focused on certain activities, but seems completely unable to focus on others, don't brush it off. We'll come back to why that happens later, and it changes how many experts understand ADHD. 2. Their brain isn't lazy. It's developing differently. Here's what most exhausted parents don't realize. Scientists have been studying ADHD brains for decades. A landmark study published in The Lancet Psychiatry found measurable differences in the development of several brain regions involved in attention, emotional regulation, and impulse control. Researchers aren't saying these brains are broken. They're developing differently. Developmental neuroscientists often describe ADHD as a delay in the maturation of executive networks rather than a lack of ability. Think about that emotionally. Your child isn't failing because they don't care. They're often working twice as hard to do something that looks effortless for other children. Another long-term study from Harvard-affiliated researchers has shown that early recognition and appropriate support can significantly improve lifelong outcomes. That means every patient explanation, every calm reminder, every predictable routine is helping build pathways their brain will continue strengthening over time. Here's what's actually happening inside their developing brain. They're practicing skills that many children acquire more automatically. You're not just teaching behavior. You're helping wire the systems that manage behavior itself. 3. They borrow your calm before they can create their own. Have you noticed your child seems completely different with you than they do with strangers? Or maybe they save their biggest emotional explosions for home. Most parents think that means they're manipulating them. But here's what's actually happening. Children regulate their emotions through trusted caregivers long before they can regulate themselves. Psychologists call this co-regulation. Your nervous system becomes the temporary control center for theirs. When you remain calm during their emotional storms, your brain is helping organize theirs. Think about that. They aren't giving you their hardest moments because you're failing. They're giving them to the person their brain trusts most. That doesn't mean boundaries disappear. Children with ADHD still benefit enormously from clear expectations and consistent routines. But those boundaries work best when delivered with calm connection instead of constant punishment. Because connection helps the thinking brain come back online. Fear often shuts it down. And hey, if this is changing how you see the child in your life, hit like and subscribe. It helps us reach more exhausted parents who need to know that what they are doing actually matters. 4. Their brain is running an ancient survival program. And here's where the science gets even more fascinating. Long before classrooms existed, long before homework, Human children evolved in environments where noticing everything could mean survival. A sudden movement in the bushes, an unfamiliar sound, a changing weather pattern. Being highly alert sometimes kept families alive. Evolutionary psychologists believe many traits associated with ADHD may have been advantageous in hunter-gatherer environments. A child who quickly noticed changes, who explored constantly, who acted rapidly, might have become an incredibly successful explorer or hunter. Of course, today's world asks children to sit still, ignore distractions, and focus on one task for long periods. That's a very different environment. So the same brain that once helped humans survive may now struggle inside modern classrooms. This doesn't make ADHD a superpower, nor does it make it a flaw. It reminds us that brains develop for environments, not report cards. 5. They aren't just distracted, they're building their future brain. Remember earlier when we talked about intense focus? This is where traditional parenting advice often gets it completely wrong. Many people ask, if they can focus on video games for hours, how can they possibly have ADHD? But here's what's actually happening. Attention in ADHD isn't simply too little, it's often inconsistent. Researchers describe this as difficulty regulating attention rather than an inability to pay attention. When something is highly stimulating or emotionally rewarding, the brain's motivation systems become deeply engaged. That's why your child may become completely absorbed in activities they genuinely love. The goal isn't forcing endless attention. It's helping children gradually learn how to shift attention when needed. Every routine, every visual schedule, every opportunity to practice waiting strengthens the skills they'll rely on throughout life. You're helping build emotional regulation, problem-solving, planning, persistence. Those are life skills far beyond childhood. 6. This is what most parents never realize. Remember when I mentioned that some children seem completely overwhelmed one moment and amazingly capable the next? This is exactly what I was talking about. Many children with ADHD hear thousands more negative comments than their peers before reaching adolescence. Sit still. Pay attention. Why can't you just listen? Over time, those messages can become part of how they see themselves. But here's the incredible opportunity you have. You become the voice that teaches them a different story. Instead of, "You're lazy," they hear, "I know you're trying." Instead of, "What's wrong with you?" they hear, "Let's figure this out together." That doesn't remove consequences. It changes identity. And identity shapes lifelong confidence. Your child is constantly asking one silent question. When I struggle, am I still safe with you? Every compassionate response answers, yes. That answer becomes part of their developing brain, perhaps more than you will ever realize. 7. When should parents pay closer attention? It's also important to know what deserves a conversation with your pediatrician. Every energetic child does not have ADHD. Many toddlers are naturally impulsive, emotional, and active. Professionals look for patterns that are persistent, occur across multiple settings, interfere with daily functioning, and continue over time. If your child consistently struggles with attention, impulsivity, emotional regulation, or hyperactivity at home, preschool, and other environments, it's worth discussing with a healthcare professional. Early evaluation doesn't automatically lead to medication. It leads to understanding. And understanding leads to better support. Pediatric researchers consistently emphasize that early intervention, whether through parent coaching, behavioral strategies, school accommodations, or other evidence-based supports, can significantly improve outcomes. Trust your instincts. If something feels different, asking questions is never overreacting. It's parenting. So, when your child forgets instructions, interrupts conversations, can't seem to stay still, or moves through the world with endless curiosity, remember the question we started with. What is actually happening inside their brain? It's not simply bad behavior, it's not laziness, and it's certainly not a reflection of your parenting. It's a developing brain learning how to organize attention, emotions, and self-control in its own unique way. That's not just being difficult. That's a child learning one of the most complex neurological skills human beings ever develop. And those everyday moments that leave you exhausted? They were never meaningless. They are opportunities to build trust, resilience, and lifelong confidence. You don't have to be a perfect parent. You simply have to be the safe place your child returns to while their brain keeps growing. And if you're doing that, even on the hardest days, you are doing a great job.